muted.
Good day, everybody. Welcome to our first Dalim Tips and Tricks of the year. We're going to have Alex Rogala present some information on managing metadata and files inside of Twist. And for those that are used to our webinars being on the second Wednesday of every month, we have changed it, and this year it's going to be on the third Wednesday of every month to get some separation between some of the ones we're doing for Semi-Ad and Virtual Publisher as well. So if you've been with us before, you're familiar with GoToWebinar's format. If you need to zoom in to see the screen better or anything, top left you should have a zoom button as shown in the image there. If you have any questions, please post those on the webinar, the GoToWebinar app on the right-hand side of the page. You should see a questions area. You can type your questions in there. If I think they're important to stop things and go over them as Alex is showing something, I'll do that. If not, I'll save the questions to the end, go over them then. So again, Alex is going to do file and metadata management, setting and extracting metadata, using metadata to drive workflow and organize files. Twist is a DAM system indexing files and metadata, and best practice for metadata standardization and consistency. So on that, let me turn the ball over to Alex here, and we'll get started. If it'll go.
There we go. Let me share out my screen. Let me know when you can see me.
Okay, I think we see you.
Yep, Adobe Bridge up there.
Yes.
Yep, that's me. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex, and I'll be talking about metadata and file management from within Twist. Typically, when we talk about Twist, we tend to focus a little more on file normalization and transformation, but it's also a really powerful tool for organizing, tagging, and maintaining large numbers of files. So today we'll probably be delving into, I'll give you a basic overview of extracting and setting metadata from within Twist. Then I'll show two specific examples. One's more geared towards a one-off file organization project, such as maybe you have a folder somewhere with 1,000 loose files that you need to kind of wrangle into some semblance of order. And then the second will be more geared towards a kind of asset management production workflow. So first, when we talk about metadata in Twist, what we're usually talking about is XMP metadata. XMP is a metadata standard. It's XML-based. It was created by Adobe about 10 to 15 years ago, and that's what's used most predominantly throughout most media and photo applications. So I have a file here, for example, in Adobe Bridge. So if I look at this file, for example, I have some metadata over here. You can see I have my name and the creator. I have my city, state, and zip, and I have a few keywords for this file. So it's meant for litho, and it's for a magazine production purpose. So I have that information there. Now let's say I want to use that in Twist. Typically how I would do that is I would use the setParam from XML tool. Pull up my workflow right here. So yeah, pretty basic workflow here. I'm just bringing the file in. I'm going to run it through a setParam from XML tool. Since XMP metadata is XML based, that tool will grab all that information. And I'm just going to show that all in a show memories and hang in a validate. So make sure you grab that file. We can see that file has come in, and if I pull down my show memories here, you'll see in addition to some of the normal document information, I have some XMP metadata in here under the XML category. So I've got my name here. You can see I've got my contact info from above. I've got my two tags for litho and magazine. So got all this information in here, pretty heavy duty, but I can take this if I want to use this in a transmit or a setParam or a program link, I can do so. One note to watch out for that I've had some issues with is the way that these are, for some of these metadata categories or these values that can hold multiple entries, Twist tends to put them with like a 1 and a 2 in brackets, which I've seen in something like, for example, in a set param from RE, if you try and reference that, Twist tries to interpret that as a tickle command. So, for example, if I was going to use the subject in a tool, what I would have to do is just add backslashes in front of each of those brackets to escape them. And after I do that, that works pretty okay. So, and I don't want to get into this too much today, but one of the benefits of using setparam from XML for this is you have some fine-grained control. Traditionally, you could do this also with the file check tool, but the results are a little cleaner, but it takes a lot longer and you can't grab quite as much information. The other roadblock people have run into is some programs have a tendency to embed a thumbnail preview, like a little mini JPEG, for example, with a PDF, in the metadata of a file. So you've got this little piece of metadata that's about 1,000 lines long, and we've seen a few instances where Twist is choked on those. So maybe you've got a file where you've got tons of metadata in there. Maybe you've got a thumbnail embedded like that, and you don't want to touch that with your setparam from XML or your file check. The easiest way to deal with that would be to go into setparam from XML, change the extraction mode to expert mode, and like I said, not going to go too in-depth on this now. This will probably be another webinar at a future date, but if I can have the option in here, I can click Browse. If I go to my desktop here, and what it'll do in here is it'll show me all that XML, that XMP metadata. It shows me all my values. I have the kind of the hierarchy of that metadata tree. So I can go in here and let's say I really want to grab the creator out and I want to grab whoever created this file. What I can do in here is there's 3 areas in here. They all correspond to different areas of the Twist table. So category, that would be like variables, document, XML. The property would be the variable name, and the value would be whatever the value you want to record in the Twist table. You have one more option over here about whether or not you're using XPath. If you use XPath, that's kind of a language that you can use to specify a specific kind of area or node within this XML file and say, I want to extract that data. If you deselect this in here, you can just make that constant. Like, for example, here, I really don't want to name the property after anything in here because that creator tool, maybe that's not the most descriptive for my purposes. So what I'll do here is I'm just going to deselect that, and I'll just name that my creator. Then for here, I do want to extract using XPath that value for the creator tool. So all I have to do here is I just click on that, and I click Set XPath as Value. And what that's going to do is for the first entry it sees for a creator tool, it's going to grab the text associated with that. If I wanted to grab the text associated with all of those, what I'd simply have to do in there is just put in a period, and then that would grab any entry under that first kind of description tag that listed my creator tool. So that's about the 101 of setparam from XML advanced extraction. We'll delve into that more at a future point. If you have any questions, let me know. But that's what you can do if you want to grab just something really fine-grained out of a file. So next trick is you can read metadata, but writing it, you use the insert metadata tool. So if I pull up this tool here, you'll see it kind of looks a little like a setparam from RE with a few differences. And the way this works is you can basically set rules for how to handle a specific piece of metadata. So I've got 4 I'm dealing with here. I'm dealing with the copyright notice, the creator of the file, the keywords, and the file rating, which is like if you have like the 1 to 5 stars, which you may have seen in Bridge or Photoshop or an application of that nature. So maybe I want to add one more. What I'll do is I'll go up here, I'll click Add, and what this is going to do is this is going to show me the list of basically metadata sets or schemas that are available on my system. So you can see I have some here for Camera Raw, I have some for PDFs, some for Photoshop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sneak down here to XMP, and I want rights management. Maybe I want to put in who the owner is. So you can see over here it shows me a little information about this. I can't edit this over here because this is a standard metadata set basically. This is all an established standard and you can't really tweak it. If I wanted to create my own, what I could do down here is I could just click New and make my own properties down in my own little custom schema here. You have an option for the schema name is kind of, that's the friendly name for it, like standard XMP properties. You've got a prefix which is used as a name actually in the metadata itself. So you might have, if it was like my metadata, and that's how it would be encoded in the file. The namespace is just, it's just a URL to distinguish it as your own metadata. So for example, if you had a piece of metadata that was job ID and you're using files from another application that also had a job ID piece of metadata, the namespace is kind of the arbiter there. It's kind of, it's an extra safeguard to be able to distinguish against other metadata with similar names. So you can see down here I can name the property, I can give it different types. Maybe I want it to be just a single, maybe I want a list, maybe I want it to be just like a Boolean where it's true or false, or maybe I only want an integer. There's a category in here too for internal versus external. Internal means that's intended for like a program use. Like if you have something in Twist that's keeping track of like a PDF output setting, that might be something you don't really want to advertise too much or show to the user. So internal would be more something it's used for an application production purpose. External would be something more that's for a user, like if you had like a certain piece of metadata that kept track of like production plant or job number, that might be external. But I don't want to build my own right now, so all I'm going to do is just take that owner that I selected earlier. I'm going to click OK. Now that I've got these in here, the way this works is you can use this to either edit existing metadata or add new metadata. And there's two different fields for those two different uses. The first is for existing metadata, there is an action on data field. So if I go to my rating, I have two options. If there's metadata in the file for that rating, I can either keep the existing metadata or I can suppress it. So keep, maybe I just want to keep it. Suppress, maybe it's something I don't want anyone to see, or I want to scrub that clean from the file. Those are my options there. I don't have to add other metadata if I don't want to. I can choose just to suppress it and be on my way. Now, if I want to take some action there, what I can do is I have two options in here, really. Do nothing, set, and set will just overwrite. And then lastly, set if missing. So I mean, if there isn't already a rating in here, then add one. Now, there are some pieces of metadata where you can have multiple entries. You can have like a list of entries, like for example, my keywords here, I have 3 that I'm entering into this file: document, prepress, and SIP, special interest publication. What you can do in a case like this are the options are a little different when you have multiple, when you can have multiple values. So you see here there's keep, there's suppress first, which that removes the first value. So if you had like 2 creators, for example, and you don't want to keep the first one, you can use suppress first to get rid of that. Suppress all would remove all entries for that that value or that property. Then I have 2 options, and I have a few more options in here too for action. I can do nothing again. I can replace the first instance of it. I can insert an instance before it. So I can just, if I wanted to tack on these in front of whatever was in the file, I would use insert first. Or I could use add to apply those to the end of my list of values. So then if I want to add stuff, I can just type in the values here. I can call twist variables if I want to. So actually, I don't want to save that right now. I got this working pretty cleanly. So that's all I'm going to do right now is just add in copyright field, creator, keywords, and ratings. So I'm going to take over here. I got 2 files here. Read metadata, which had the metadata we looked at earlier, and write metadata, which is a file that doesn't have any of these properties. I'll let those crunch through real quick. You can see those popped in there. They both got their rating of 2. If I look, for example, at the write metadata, I have my new creator as Demo Corp. My keywords are document, prepress, and SIP. If I go to the one we used before as the example that had existing metadata, you can see in here it replaced me as the initial creator because I had it set to insert first. So it added Demo Corp in front of me. Here I had, for the keywords, I had it set to append those to the end. So you've got my initial 2, litho and magazine, followed by document, prepress, and SIP. And my address info hasn't changed because I did not modify that within that tool. So you got a lot of flexibility on how you can handle reading or writing metadata. But two production examples of how this might work in the real world. So for one of these, let me find where I got my file browser here. So I have some stuff in here. I have a folder. It has about 80 items in it, just random items. And maybe I want to sort these into some kind of semblance of usability so that I don't just have this flat folder full of junk, which got a lot of stuff in here. I have some Canon RAW files, some Nikon RAWs. I actually have some Word documents, PDFs, TIFFs, JPEGs, an InDesign file. There's a whole bunch of junk, which actually gets a little trickier because there are some formats, for example, such as Nikon RAW here, that do not support embedded metadata. So those files can't have any XMP metadata stored within them. So what happens in those cases is there's a sidecar file, as it's called. There's another XMP file that contains all that metadata, and I've got one of those right here. So the trick is, if I want to parse all this information out of these files and use it to organize them usefully, how do I handle a situation like that? And this is going to take a few minutes to crunch, so I'll pop these in and then we can talk about it while they run through. So yep, we got our files running in there right now. So what this workflow is going to do primarily is it's going to take files and it's going to stash them into folders based on their file type. There's a little more information in there. If it finds an author in the file metadata, it'll also stash it in a subdirectory for that author, so you have a little more fine-grained storage. In order to handle the XMP sidecar files, I have the set param here at the beginning that checks to see if it's a raw file or if it's an XMP sidecar file. If it's not either of those, it goes right on. If it's a sidecar file, it gets stashed to, I just have a generic location out there on my network, just gets stashed right there. If it is a raw file, which would likely have a sidecar file, it goes to this wait on here. And this wait on is just set to check and wait for 3 minutes to see if a XMP file comes in, just to buy some time. The set param from XML here, I have that all configured automatically. If I go into my options, I have it set to try and read from a XML file, an XMP file at that location I was using as my stash. If it can't find one, then what it'll try to do is it'll try to use if there's any metadata in the file itself. So it really works out so that if it sees an external XMP file, it's going to use that. If not, it's probably going to be another kind of file that already has embedded metadata. So that's been giving me pretty good results. I have a set param from RE here that sets the transmit path to the root path. I have like a just generic network path I want to transmit to. I have a file type, which is just my file extension. I did make one addition there for Camera Raw, and then I have a folder for creator or the file author, which if that's not set, it's not going to file that far down. So pretty straightforward there. Just to make this a little trickier, what I did was I checked the files, and if it's an image file that had a film speed rating or like an ISO rating, then what it does is it goes up to this other branch and sets the rating of the file depending on the film speed. So first off, if it's 800 ISO or greater, then it gets rated a 1. Maybe it's too grainy if you're running a print publication. Maybe an 800 ISO or 1000 ISO photo is a little too grainy for your needs, so I'm going to rate that a 1. Second is if it's greater than 400, or it's between 400 and 800, then what it's going to do is rate it as a 3. And then lastly, if it's 200 or less, what it's going to do is it's going to rate it a 5. So those files should be crunching through. They should be nearly done. One or two stragglers there. So if I go to my output directory here, I can see I have my file filter folder. That's my root transmit path. I have folders in here named after each of the file extensions. And for some of them, like I have a shell script here that's just going directly to that folder. Same for HTML. If I go to something, for example, like a PDF, if it has an author name in there, it got stashed in a subdirectory for that author. If not, it got stashed kind of up at the root. For raw, I actually put one more step in there, like I said. So raw were all sent to a folder for raw. And depending on whether it was Canon, Nikon, or Adobe DNG, got placed into different folders, again with the author underneath that. So in fact, if I actually go to Bridge, a little easier to see the metadata in here. And I go to my JPEG folder, you can see in here it did indeed rate all my files based on the film speed. So I got one file here that was shot at 200 ISO, so that got rated a 5. I got another one here that's, I think that's about ISO 250, so that's okay. I can do better, so I rated it a 3, and I got one here that was shot at 1,000, so that got rated a 1. That would not be any good for my publication, maybe. So that's just an example of how you can use metadata to very easily sift files into a little more of a hierarchy and actually set more metadata based on computations you're doing in Twist. So that would be useful for sort of like a one-off project. Maybe you have a folder like that on your system somewhere. So, but what about normal everyday production? One of the other things I did build for this was I built a little miniature dam using just Twist and MySQL. So I'm going to go pull that up now. I had 2 workflows for that. The first was DB file organizer. And actually, let me get my process log back up here. Clean that out so it's a little more viewable. I've got another folder over here where I have a bunch of just random PDFs in here that are all tagged with a few different tags relating to maybe my production workflow, tagged with product type and print process. So I've got, for example, here, this is a litho product. It's for a magazine. I've got something down here, a reviewer magazine. Maybe I've got like a litho advertisement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all these and I'm just going to drag them into, I'm going to drag them all into this workflow. And my server is going to crash on me. Hang on one second. So while that's coming back up, what this does is, actually we're good. You go back to Bridge real quick. I'll drag all these files in. So what this workflow is going to do while this uploads is it's going to go in here. I have another special set param from XML command that's going to grab all the keywords from this file. Once it's done that, it's going to set a transmit path for the file, stash it somewhere, and then register it in the database. If that file has any keywords in there that my workflow finds, it's going to register those in the database, basically index them so I know, okay, this file has these keywords attached to it, so that I can retrieve them at a later point. So yep, looks like those all made it in. So what I can do now is, I have another workflow here, get files. Maybe I want to retrieve all the files that have that litho tag attached to them, that litho keyword. What I can do over here is I have a little XML ticket and another workflow. And this little XML job ticket, this is probably overkill for this purpose, but if you had something a little more advanced where you wanted to search on multiple criteria and you had like an application that was generating this sort of thing would be a good fit. But my XML file only has one attribute in there, just a value for what keyword to search for. In this case, it's just litho. So if I take that file and drop that into my new workflow here, db get files, then what that's going to do, there we go, is it's going to extract that from my XML file I dropped. It's going to query my database for any file that has that litho tag. Then it's going to take them, it's going to wait a few minutes for them all to arrive, and it's going to zip them up and transmit them to me. So it'll probably take about 2 or 3 minutes. I think I put in that filter group. It waits a little bit, but yeah, something like this is it's a little miniature dam that you can use basically to just index those files so you know exactly what metadata is in what file. You don't have to go crawling around your file system, for example. And the use of something like this would be if you were in a situation where you had a lot of metadata in your files, you could actually put constraints on what you're allowing in. Like you could have, for example, in the database a check that says if this isn't a valid piece of metadata, then either suppress it or make the file error out of the workflow. So that way you have a little control. You can constrain what metadata is in there. The other way to handle that too would be you could use, for example, like a web link or the TwistLink plugin for InDesign and Illustrator and a PPV variable to set up a little thing like this so that you have just a constrained list of metadata that an operator can choose from. So a little more control there. And if I go back, it looks like my files are done. So if I go to webinar output, and I go, I have a new DB get files folder here, and it shows me litho assets. And if I go in here, I have all my files that had that litho tag. So that's about the gist of it. Those are 2 examples for how you can use metadata to either organize large numbers of unstructured files or to really tag and maintain files that are on your production system. So that's about it. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, we do have a couple. Alex, thanks for that. That was pretty informative. Just I think the first question that got submitted was basically just asking about licensing in Twist and whether anything that you showed requires additional licensing. The separam from XML and show memories, those tools are basic tools. The database set members from DB tool is an additional cost tool of the memories package. So there's a licensing fee there, but the separam from RE, separam from XML are all standard tools.
Yeah, so something like this, for example, you could do pretty much with, I think, the standard tool set.
Yes, I believe so. We had another question about sidecar files, but I think you covered that and showed nicely how you can actually work with sidecar files inside of it. Somebody did ask about processing the raw files and whether Twist can handle raw files through the workflow. We do have some customers that run raw files through Twist. There's no, unless I missed something recently, there's no tool inside of Twist itself that deals with raw files itself, but we do call third-party utilities like DC raw or UF raw to do those conversions and be able to apply settings using memories tools and everything to set it correctly. DC raw is really actually the utility that's used even by UF raw. It calls DC raw. UF raw just gives you a little bit nicer control or more human readable control over some of the variables that are sent to make the adjustments. We've gotten pretty good results with those, so it's a pretty good utility to use. And we do have photo studios that are using that to do conversions. Let's see what else. Could you show some of the settings that you have, like for separam from DB and your separam from XML inside of, I think this is a workflow they're talking about there that you have.
Yeah, the DB file organizer, sure thing. So the way I had this rigged up was I just had one rule in here. I don't think that's my example file there. Let me pull up, I should have another one here. Actually, I don't want to use that one. Let me pull one of the ones from. So for example here, what I was doing is, I forget where that's hiding in my hierarchy. Okay, so subject. there's a subject tag in here that has a little bag in it. And my two keywords, which I had set in Bridge, litho, and magazine, they're both in there as list items. What I did here, this wasn't super high tech. All I did was I took the default XPath this gave me, and I changed that from li1 to a period. So what it did is it just gave me all my tags there delimited by a space. So that's what I did there, just to get those in a format where I could use them. I had a set param from here that just, I grabbed the PID from my database just as a extra kind of thing to shore up my unique ID in there. I set my path and I set my full name to just whatever the file name was. My register file here, I had a little database that just, see, all I did here was I just did an insert into, I had an asset table and a keyword table, and I linked them together a little bit, but I just inserted the file name, put the creation time and transmit path and my process ID into the database there. If there was a keyword in the file, it goes down this path and it just registers that keyword and the foreign key for that asset from the other table. So pretty straightforward. On the other end, flip side, to get that back, let me pull up dbget files. All I did here is set param from XML was the default settings. Search metadata, I just did a join on my two tables, concatenated the file location and the name, and then grabbed that for any file that included my keyword. Once I got those, I went to a wait on, set that wait on to pick up that file and wait in a filter group that timed out after about a minute. Once that timed out, ran it through a compress tool, renamed it, and transmitted it to its final location.
Great. Thanks, Alex.
No problem.
And those of you that aren't familiar with separam from DB or haven't had a chance to use it, it basically can work with really any JDBC compliant database. So all you need is a driver. We've used it with MySQL, Postgres. There's been Oracle instances, Microsoft SQL, FileMaker Pro databases. FileMaker Pro, there's only certain versions that work because only certain FileMakers actually have JDBC compatibility. I'm not sure I don't know if Mike or Alex, if y'all can think of other databases to work with, but it works pretty well with all of those databases. We did have somebody make a comment that asked them about ImageMagick being part of Twist. ImageMagick itself isn't part of it, but as utility that, again, we can call. But I don't think ImageMagick does raw conversions, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah, I don't think we usually use that for it. But
and somebody also corrected me and says apparently now it does work with all versions of FileMaker. And the person submitted, I think I set up a FileMaker database for them a long time ago. But, so thanks for that. And I think that's it. That's all of the questions. So let me take back over here. So, everybody, thanks for attending again. Happy New Year to everybody. And again, we're going to be doing these this year on the third Wednesday of every month. As soon as we have the topic for next month, we'll put that out. We'll put a mailer out, send it to everybody, let you know what it is. If anyone has a good idea for something we should be covering, please send that to text@blanchard.com or to me directly. We'd be happy to take a look at it, consider it, and put it in line. We're always looking for good ideas or good information to send. You can get our calendar of events and other trainings and things that we may be doing on our BlanchardSystems.com website on the events page. And I wanted to remind everybody that Duo will be coming in April here back in New Orleans. We have information on our website about it. There's a mailer that went out. I think early registration is ending soon, so please register soon to get discounts on that. And just informational, it is, I believe, the weekend before is the French Quarter Festival. So if you want to come enjoy New Orleans a little bit before Duo and maybe bring a wife or family and enjoy the French Quarter Festival, keep that in mind. It's a pretty big event. It's not as big as Jazz Fest yet, but it has been a growing event and brings a lot of people into the French Quarter and the surrounding area. So everyone, hope you have a wonderful week, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks again.